Welcome to survey line coding, or sometimes known as field procedures, or in some cases field to finish. The next few moments we're going to go through the line coding process for field crews so that when you're out in the field and you're collecting data, you use the proper coding sequence so that the lines are drawn automatically by Civil 3D when you import your fieldbook or an ASCII point file into the survey database. Now you want to make sure that Civil 3D is set up with these codes, and we have a line code set that is set up that uses certain codes like a B for begin or an E for end. Those codes tell the figures when it's processed when to start and stop the line, when to begin the curves, when to close the figure. So you want to make sure that your field crews using these codes and they're keying this information in properly so that you don't have to do a lot of editing or manipulation inside the office. Now, you want to also keep in mind that just because you can doesn't mean you should. So there are certain codes that, while they look really good on paper, sometimes don't work real well out in the field because you got to remember and recall a bunch of information. So I find that if you use like a noting feature out in the field and tell it that it's a right turn, see sketch, well then you have a sketch that has your dimensions on it, and you take those dimensions, and when you edit the file before you process it or edit it after you process it, you actually use these same key codes or line codes when you're editing the fieldbook file as you process your data in the office. So some of this is mostly out in the field, but there's some office procedures that you also want to know when using field to finish or line coding inside of Civil 3D. Now, you'll see here as we go through this, I'm going to focus on some major ones that we find are very helpful and very useful, but there's all kinds of different scenarios where you can use these codes. And it's really what I say is keep it simple, start simple, and then as you get more advanced, you can start doing and using some of the more advanced codes and or sequencing. So let's begin with a very basic beginning field code or line code. So as you can see here in my image, what I have is I've got a curb line and an edge of pavement here. And you can see that what I'm doing is I'm starting the line with a B. So basically that B tells the code or the figure when to start. So I'm saying EPB. Now in reality that would probably be further up the road wherever I'm starting my survey. And then what I'm doing is I'm going to the very next shot. All right, so it's going to draw a line to this shot right here. Well, that shot there is a PC. And what I'm doing here is I'm telling it that I want to put a little curve in here. So I'm using a PC and then a PT to end the line. So PC is beginning the line and a PT to end the line. Now, you also notice that I took a shot in the middle and I just called it EP. The software will pick that up and make that part of the curve as it draws this line. Now, you could also get away with just using 3 points and not using that PT. So if I do the PC by itself and then an EP for the second shot and then an EP for the third shot, which is the PT, and don't put PT, it'll still draw a curve through there because when it sees PC by itself, it assumes a 3-point curve. And then you can see I'm just going down the rest of the road, shooting EPs, EPs, and then EP. And at the end, I'm putting an E because I want to stop that line. In reality, I may carry that around the curve, and that where that E is might be a PC again to actually pick up the rest of that curve as it goes around. Okay. Now, you don't need the E, like I said, but sometimes it's nice to have it in there. Now, if you leave the E off and then you come back and you pick up with EP again, then it'll just pick up where it left off. Now, just to keep in mind, something to point out is if I was shooting both sides of the road, so if I was shooting this side as well, I would want to have this as EP1 or EPL and the other side is EP right. As long as it has EP and then some other character after it and they're unique, then you could actually do a cross-sectional method where I could start here and then come over here and then jump over this side and then jump over to that side and then jump over to this side. So you see I can go back and forth. I like to shoot in what's called a string method, but either method works, and you also don't have to just shoot the string. So if I was shooting that EP and started there, and then I went out here and I grabbed that sign, I might call this SGN, and then I could come back and shoot that EP. So you don't have to go sequentially and just only shoot that line. You can jump out and shoot other features. So keep that in mind as you're collecting data. Now here's another example of an island and some different examples. So what I'm doing here, when you're doing the island, I don't like to start on the curve, so I would start maybe in the middle of the curve right here. And then what I would do is go up to this point here, and I would call that EP PC. And then you can see that I'm using, again, a 3-point curve as I go around the curve, and I'm putting a PT in there. And then over here what I'm doing is I'm putting an EP, but also notice that I'm double coding this. I'm putting a PSB. I'm telling it that I also want to begin that pavement stripe as it goes down, and shoots off. Now we're going to come back and talk about multi-codes here in a minute, but I just wanted to show you that at this same point I can have one shot, take EP space PS for parking stripe and then B to begin that line. And then I can continue down shooting the rest of the edge of pavement. And notice what I'm doing here. Instead of using a PC, we have another command that is either, it's a point on curve. Now you can use OC for on curve. In this particular image I'm using PO, but the line code sometimes by default is OC for on curve. As long as your line code set matches what you're using on the field, it doesn't matter what you use. Okay, so but basically what this does is it creates a 3-point curve with that incoming tangent and that outgoing tangent. So it fits a curve in between those two shots. All right, and then you can also see I'm using a close command or CLS, and what that'll do is that'll close it back on the beginning of my island. So again, reducing the amount of shots. So if you wanted to, it depends on whether you're doing as-built and you need elevation, or if you're just doing it for horizontal location, you could essentially just get, basically get rid of some of these shots. You could shoot this as a PO and not code in the PCPT. But just keep in mind, don't put PC, PO, and PT. You don't want to mix an on-curve shot with a PCPT method. So basically what I would recommend is pick one or the other. Don't do both. So here's another example where you can use basically just PC and PT. So again, if you're not worried about elevation, this might work for you. And basically what you're doing here is you can see that I'm starting my edge of pavement here, and I'm coming down here and I'm shooting this PC. And then what I'm doing is I'm going around, and instead of shooting a midpoint, I'm just shooting this PT here. So what it does is it actually just draws a curve in there with these two tangent pieces. So it'll actually come up to this next PC, and you can see I'm just going to do a PC PT on that one, and then back down to an edge of pavement and back over. So again, it's just showing you that you don't need a midpoint if you're using the PC and PT. Now keep in mind, you won't have an elevation point at the midpoint of that curve. All right, so something to consider. Here's another method for coding multiple points, and you can see here is I've got this curve. You can see it comes down, and then it looks like it's kind of got a reverse curve in there. So what I'm doing here is I'm starting with the EP PC at the very bottom, and then I'm just shooting a bunch of EP shots. And then in here I want to make sure that I shoot where that return is, but notice I'm not doing any special coding. And all it's doing is I'm just continuing the edge of pavement until I get to the PT. What it's going to do is it's going to fit a curve through all those EP shots for me and make one long linear type of curve. Could be it's not really a spline, but it's going to have a curve as it goes through and reverses. So again, you're just starting with the begin, then you're using the PC to begin the curve, the PT to end the curve, and anything in between, it's going to draw the curve through those points. All right, so now we're getting to something a little bit more advanced, and this is more of a rectangle command. So you can see here in my image that I can probably get to 3 of these building corners. So what I'm doing here is I'm starting with this building corner right over here, and then I'm going to shoot this corner here. You notice that I started with a B over here, and then I did a building to there, and then over here I'm using the RECT or rectangle command. And what it's going to do is it's going to draw a line obviously from here to here, and it's going to use these two sides to close out that rectangle. All right, so it's going to give me a rectangle or a square with 3 shots. All right. Now there's an alternative method or use of the rectangle command, and that is in the case, I use this a lot for stairs or concrete pads that shoot into the building, because if I'm using GPS or something, it's very difficult to get those shots in there. So what I would do is measure this distance that's in here, and let's say that that's 10 feet. Well, you can see what I'm doing is I'm starting here with a shot, which is the ECB, and then I'm coming down here and I'm taking this shot, which is the EC, and I'm putting a rectangle minus 10. And what it does is it basically creates a rectangle 10 feet this way. Now I will pick up and it'll add another line over there, but that's going to be on top of the building line or under the building line, so it's not going to show up or display, so I'm not too concerned about that. But what it does, it creates 2 perpendicular lines as it goes towards that building. So it's really kind of helpful. So again, if you think of shooting the 2 fronts of steps or a stoop and let it shoot in, as long as you measure it in. Now I used a -10 because this is my direction of travel, so the information is to my left. If I was going the opposite way and I started here with my begin, then what would happen is over here, this would be my B over here, and then over here I would have my rectangle and it would be a 10. So it's going to go 10 feet to the right. Here's another more advanced one. This is one of those cases where I would say I would do this in the office, not in the field, because you would have to remember and key in this string of code right here. And that becomes very difficult if you got to remember all those sides. But basically what I would do is I would have a sketch of this building. And just to speed up so I don't have to shoot every shot, is if I shot this corner here and said begin building, and then I shot this one over here and I put in an RT, which I forgot to put in my code there. All right, so I'm using this RT command, and what that does is that's a right turn. So if it's a positive value, it's going to go to the right. If it's a negative value, it's going to go to the left. So in this case, I'm going down the side of the building, and then I'm making basically a left turn or a negative 20-foot turn, all right, which is that first value. And then I'm going back to the right, a 1-foot jog. And then I'm going back over here, looks like a -10. And then it goes back in a negative, or actually I'm coming back out another 1 foot. And then I'm going over 15. And then I'm going back -1. And then I'm going over -10. Or it would be a +10 actually. Yep, so there's a +10. And then going back this way and then working my way around the building. And basically just doing a bunch of left and right turns. So what I'm doing here is I'm using the negative or positive, but like I said, I would do this in the office. I would have a sketch and I would measure up my building. I would find the point in my survey, this point right here, and I would edit that point's properties to key in this string of left and right turns. And then I would use the close to close that figure out, and then therefore creating a nice a figure without having to sit there and do a bunch of polyline and offsets and different objects. I'm actually going to create a figure that is a closed figure in my survey database that has all the right building dimensions. So now we talked a little bit about this a few moments ago, but this is multi-coding, and you can run kind of 2 strings simultaneously or at the same time. So what I'm doing here is, I'm coming along this edge of pavement. So maybe I started it back here somewhere with a begin. All right, so I EPB. And then I'm shooting that edge of pavement as I go down here. I got my curve. I'm coming into the curve here. And then I'm coming into this shot right here. Well, that shot is also the intersection of the concrete pad for my fuel island. So what I've done is I've put in a CNC with a B to begin that line. And then I can either go this way and pick up these CNC shots, or I could just continue up and shoot that edge of pavement and then come back and shoot these shots. But what it'll do is it'll draw a string and a line that's a concrete pad going in that direction, and as well as drawing the edge of pavement going in that direction. So again, with one shot, I don't have to shoot 2 shots at this spot right here. I can shoot 1 shot and have it go off in both directions. Here's another command which can be used a lot of different cases for this. This gets used probably quite a bit with utility and overhead information. But here, I just want to show you an example here. So let's say that I started up here and I shot this island that we see up here. All right, and the shot I took right there is 1052. Now you'd have to remember what that number is. All right, so again, this may be another case of being what you would do in the office. Okay, but if that's 1052, when I come down here and I start shooting this island and I get to this point right here, if I key in an EP, which is going to create the edge of pavement of my island, and then I use the PS for the pavement stripe and I do a CPN 1052, then what it's going to do is it's going to draw a line up to that 1052. It's going to connect that line up to there. And by using the PS, it'll use that as the feature code or to draw the figure code. So it's going to draw a pavement stripe figure rather than an edge of pavement stripe figure. If I didn't put the PS in there and I just said EP connect and CPN 1052, then it would draw an EP figure from this point here up to 1052. All right, so again, you can do this with multi-coding and using the connect command. So here's another useful feature, which is the horizontal and vertical offsets. Now again, maybe done in the office, maybe done in the field. The problem I hear a lot is, depending on your controller, is how many characters your description key will actually allow you to bring in or key in. Okay, so sometimes, like I know here in Virginia, we have a CG6 or CG2. Well, I just have the field guys code in the CG6 or CG2, and then when I'm editing my field book, I do a search and replace, and I replace CG6 with a string of horizontal and vertical offsets. And when I process my field work into Civil 3D, it actually creates the offsets for me. So the field crew's only got to tell me what type of curve it is, and we use our standard details to figure out the offsets for both horizontal and vertical. But what I'm showing here is I'm going in this direction, okay, and I'm starting here with my edge of pavement, and I keyed in an H negative or an H1, all right, 1 being positive to the right. If I was going the opposite direction, if I was going this way, then that would be a negative value. Since I'm going this way, it's a plus, because negative would be to my left. Okay, so here I'm going -1, and that's a 1 foot offset. It's going to draw that offset over to that point, which is going to pick up my gutter pan or my flow line. And then I'm doing a V -0.08, so it's dropping 0.08 to give me the vertical relief. So my line basically giving my gutter pan. Okay, and then I'm doing another 1.5 because I'm coming from this point to pick up that back of curb. And then I'm coming up 0.5, and it's actually probably going to be a little bit higher. Maybe that should be like 0.4, because you're not coming from the flow line. You're actually coming from this point, edge of pavement point right there. So again, that might not be 0.5, it might be 0.4. But that's the vertical difference. So it's going to create that point. And then when I come to this point, because it's the same horizontal and vertical offset, I'm just going to put EP, and it's going to apply these same values over here to this shot over here, and then it's going to draw a line creating my offsets. Okay. Now when I get over here, I'm making a change to the vertical. All right, so this shot's the same, but this next one I got a 0.1. So I'm coming up just a little bit higher for that one. So what'll happen is this is going to drop down, okay, and then this will come over here. So it's going to create my curb depression. Again, using the same codes for this one, so I just need an EP there. And it doesn't hurt to have those. So if you just hit enter and it goes back in and adds them, that's fine. But it's going to, just create that line and that line. And then it's going to come up where I'm using that 0.5 again for the back vertical. All right, so this is going to be all one line, and this will be a line as it goes through. So basically you're getting the horizontal vertical offsets just by keying in that string of code. All right, again, something that I'd probably do in the office, possibly not done in the field. I may just shoot in the field. I may just actually shoot the edge of pavement, the bottom of curb, and then the top back of curb, and just keep shooting all those strings. It's a little bit more shots, but it's less coding and less things I have to worry about. So I can just take the shots and not worry about it. But again, it's kind of personal preference on those that aspect. A couple more is a circle command. So you can see here is if I shot this shot here and I call it edge of concrete and I put in a CIR and then I shoot 1, 2, and 3, or I could just shoot those two, it's going to fit a circle through those points and create a circle object for me, or circle figure. So that's pretty nice. You can just, you don't have to do a bunch of polylines or a bunch of, PCs and PTs. If you know it's a circle, you shoot it, you code the first shot as a circle, and then take your next 3 shots and it'll create that circle for you. Another option with this tool, which is nice, is in this case around a single object. So if we shoot the flagpole here, and you see that I put in the FP for the feature code, and then I put in a CIR for this, and CIR 6, 6 being the radius of the circle, it's going to draw this circle out here around the flagpole, and that value right there is 6. So my radius of the circle is 6. So I've got a 12-foot circle, diameter circle around the base of this flagpole. You could do one, you could think about this doing it for, a tree and then the drip line. So you could locate the tree and then put a CIR 25 if it had a 25-foot drip line around the tree. So a lot of different things you can do with these circle commands. Now there's a bunch of other options as well that you can use, but these are kind of the basics that really get you started using the figure codes to collect data, the line codes to collect data out in the field. So just make sure that whatever you use out in the field, you key it in properly with the right spaces and the right nomenclature, and then it is tied into your line code set that's inside of Civil 3D. And when you process it, you'll get a very successful field to finish project.